Historical performance data is the only metric that doesn't lie, and in the high-stakes primary for Maine's U.S. Senate seat, we are currently watching a massive brand valuation conflict. For 5 consecutive cycles, the Republican incumbent has successfully liquidated every Democratic challenger, proving that the perception of weakness is a recurring material misstatement that leads to a total market default on election night. While the political market is currently screaming for a high-growth, youthful asset, a forensic review of the baseline requirements shows that winning is the only currency that doesn't depreciate under pressure. This is the moment where the proven asset meets the voter mandate to determine if Maine can actually restore its constitutional internal controls or if the seat remains a permanent liability for the national ledger. This is the proven asset audit. And for Camillo's house, we are documenting why the net present value of experience is the only thing that can break a 24-year losing streak. I am Camillo Motado, and this is Camillo's house. As a certified public accountant focused on forensic data verification, I look past the headlines to see the underlying statement of cash flows for political power. In a standard audit, we look for material misstatements in a company's records. But today, we are auditing the internal controls of the Maine Democratic primary. We are documenting a significant disclosure from Stephen Rowe, an Army veteran and former public servant, who has issued a performance appraisal that challenges the current market trend toward unproven, youthful candidates. Rowe's letter isn't just a political endorsement. It is a risk management report that identifies Janet Mills as the only candidate with the statewide brand equity necessary to reclaim a seat that has been off the books for Democrats since the late 90s. To understand the material risk of this race, we have to perform a historical audit of the incumbent Susan Collins. The data is clear. Collins has defeated her last 5 consecutive opponents. In the world of competitive analysis, that is a monopoly of the market share that cannot be ignored. Every 6 years, the market perception is that she is weak, that her asset value has dropped, and that she is finally vulnerable to a hostile takeover. Yet, cycle after cycle, those projections have proven to be inaccurate estimates. If you audit the 2020 results, you see a scenario where the polling data suggested a total liquidity crisis for Collins, only for her to outperform the market by double digits on the final report. This resilience is a structural feature of her brand, and any candidate without proven statewide penetration is likely to face an immediate delisting when the general election begins. This is why Stephen Rowe is focusing on the proven winner asset. Janet Mills has successfully won statewide twice in the last 8 years. In forensic terms, she has a verified track record of capital appreciation across all 16 counties of Maine. She isn't a speculative investment or a high-growth startup like some of the more youthful challengers. She is an established blue-chip asset that has already survived 2 stress tests by the Maine electorate. Rowe argues that the National Republican Senate Committee fears Mills more than any other potential candidate because they know her brand loyalty extends into the split-ticket market, the very shareholders that Susan Collins has relied on for decades to maintain her seat. If you want to liquidate a 24-year incumbent, you don't do it with speculation. You do it with market certainty. We also have to audit the constitutional internal controls that are at the center of this campaign. Rowe, speaking as a veteran, has identified a material breach in the nation's rule of law ledger, pointing directly to the damage done by the Trump administration. From a forensic perspective, he is auditing the integrity of the system. He argues that to restore the constitutional democracy, the Democratic Party must secure a majority of the board, meaning both houses of Congress. The opportunity cost of losing this seat in Maine is not just a local failure. It is a systemic deficit that prevents the national government from reconciling the books on executive overreach. In this context, the Senate seat is a strategic reserve asset that determines the operating capacity of the entire federal government. The youth versus experience debate is perhaps the most contested line item in this audit. There is a growing market sentiment that the party needs a more youthful candidate to drive user engagement among younger voters. However, Rowe's performance audit of Janet Mills suggests that energy and mindset are the primary drivers of productivity, not the date of incorporation. He notes that Mills has unlimited energy and a brilliant mind, capable of running circles around candidates half her age. In auditing terms, this is a productivity review. If an established asset is still producing at a higher operational capacity than a new asset, then amortizing the value of the senior candidate based on age alone is a valuation error. You don't trade a high-yield bond for a penny stock just because the penny stock looks newer on the exchange. Rowe's letter also emphasizes toughness as a core competency. He describes Mills as a candidate who is prepared to fight like hell to take back the country. In a high-volatility market like the U.S. Senate, resilience is the most valuable intangible asset a candidate can possess. The Trump sycophant narrative has created a toxic political climate where soft assets are quickly liquidated by aggressive negative advertising. By positioning Mills as a proven fighter who will hit the ground running, Rowe is arguing that she has the operational readiness to survive the market volatility of a general election against a seasoned competitor like Collins. She isn't just prepared to serve, she is ready to compete on day one without a learning curve liability. We have to look at the National Republican Senate Committee as the short sellers in this scenario. Their strategy is to highlight any internal conflict within the Democratic primary, hoping that a fractured base will lead to a default in the general election. By identifying Mills as the candidate they fear the most, Rowe is performing a competitor analysis. If your rival firm is desperately trying to devalue one of your assets, it is usually because that asset represents the greatest threat to their market dominance. The NRSC knows that Janet Mills is the only candidate who can cannibalize the moderate Republican and independent voter base that Susan Collins needs to stay solvent. The final reconciliation of the Maine primary audit reveals a conflict between idealism and operational reality. While the youthful growth narrative is attractive to some voter segments, the net present value of Janet Mills' winning record provides a security margin that no other candidate can offer. Stephen Rowe's letter is a call to action for voter stakeholders to prioritize market stability and proven performance over speculative potential. He is arguing that in a constitutional crisis, you don't experiment with the core assets of the party. You deploy your most liquid and successful leader to ensure a successful closing on election night. My forensic verdict on the Stephen Rowe endorsement is that it represents a flight to quality. In a distressed market where the rule of law is under audit, the most valuable currency is statewide credibility. Janet Mills has built up the reserves of trust over 8 years of statewide management, and her brand equity is currently at its all-time high. While youth is a renewable asset, winning is a limited asset that few candidates actually possess. By focusing on the performance data rather than the age narrative, Rowe is providing a fiduciary roadmap for Maine Democrats to maximize their ROI for the 2026 Senate cycle. I want to hear from you. Does statewide brand equity outweigh the market demand for a more youthful candidate? Can a proven winner like Janet Mills finally liquidate the Susan Collins monopoly? Or is the perception of weakness just another recurring error in the Democratic audit? Let me know in the comments. Your perspective is the only audit that matters when the future of the Senate majority is sitting on the negotiation table. I am Camillo Motato, and this is Camillo's House. Subscribe to stay informed on the numbers, the laws, and the truth behind the headlines. Stay safe.